Hey everyone, welcome to the Be Bold, Make Waves podcast, a show bringing you inspiring stories of women who are growing and scaling their business. I'm your host, Laura Comark, a website and tech integration specialist who works with online business owners who love their work and not their website. Join me as we have incredible conversations about business, mindset, productivity, and of course, the website and tech behind the business. Let's go ahead and dive in to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's show. For those of you who don't already know me, I'm Laura Comark, web designer, evergreen system, and funnel integration expert for coaches and consultants who love their work but not their tech. I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Brenda Cadman. Brenda is a Canva verified expert from Prince Edward Island in Canada. After spending more than 2 decades supporting businesses with their website development needs, she now focuses on teaching entrepreneurs how to use Canva more effectively and efficiently. Brenda has taught thousands of small business owners through her courses, and in particular, she loves to help business owners tame their hot mess Canva accounts by creating an organizational system that ensures they can spend less time in Canva and more time doing what they love. Brenda, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got into being this Canva organizational expert?
It's been many roads leading to that role, but it's one of those things. I look back at all of the experiences that I've had in business over the past couple of decades, and you realize how all of those were kind of stepping stones to get to where I am now. And I finally, it's really only been in the last handful of years that I feel like I am, this is what I was meant to do. This is the amalgamation of all the different skill sets and experiences and passions in one role. And I'm actually excited when I get up in the morning to get to work. So in terms of, how I got here, I did work I ran a website development company for 20 years in various forms, part of a website development agency with a business partner for a while, then went back out on my own. Prior to that, I was a professional organizer. You're going to start seeing some of these threads come through. And my specialty was actually helping business owners and professionals conquer their filing cabinets, finally going through them and creating systems and tackling all the piles of paper on their desks. I remember one doctor that I worked with, and I think she had about 6 filing cabinets in her office, and they were all stuffed full. She was a researcher as well. And by the time we were done, I think we completely freed up 2 of them so she could get them out. So, taking those skills, and I love to do that, but it's always just been a kind of a skill set in the back of the business that I didn't really get to share with people. And then when I started looking into building out my courses for, they were going to teach folks some of the ways to improve your website experience. I went into a program for developing courses. I'd been building courses for 5 years already, but they were not selling the way that I wanted them to. And I'm sure many people can relate to that experience. Yep. But what I found when I started asking questions about what people were interested in, they were less interested in the content I was planning on developing, and they were more interested in asking me questions about how I was creating my lead magnet for that, and how did I lay that particular thing out in Canva. And all these Canva questions started to come, so I started to answer them, and I started to do little demos and trainings and tutorials. This was not anything I was offering as a business, but I knew it and I could help them. And then they started asking if that's what my courses were going to be about. Ding, ding, ding. That's the moment you realize, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So that was a real fork in the road moment. And I decided to start pursuing that. Did that alongside the website development business for 3 or 4 years. Very difficult to do both at the same time. I don't recommend trying to run 2 different businesses simultaneously. And then September 2022, I decided it's time to just pull the plug on it, retired the website business, and it's just all Canva all the time now.
Wow. Oh, I love that story. That is just amazing. Canva organization is just so overwhelming to me. And I know it is to so many of our listeners as well, because it's a hot mess in there.
Yeah. It
So
is not as an intuitive as it could be and it should be. And if my list of feature requests that I have submitted on multiple occasions ever gets fed through and implemented, it will be much better. But, baby steps. So,
baby steps. When someone is in their Canva account and they're like, this is a just total mess, what tips do you have for like, here's some of the things, like some simple first baby steps you can do to really start organizing your Canva account to get a little bit
honest,
more of a handle on it?
yeah. And the first one, it can feel daunting, but it actually doesn't require a lot of decision. Not a, well, it requires some decision making, but it's probably going to be easier in terms of the decisions you have to make. And that is, you just have to go through and do a purge. You got to go the same way. That filing cabinet that we took from 6 cabinets down to 4. There was a lot of, do you actually need to keep this? Well, that was from, 22 years ago, and I haven't done anything with it in 10 and whatever. These are the things we didn't, the shredding, Laura, that I did, boxes and boxes of shredding, because she was a physician and researcher. So it was sensitive information. So I had to, hide in their little shredding with the big major shredder, tossing piles of this stuff in. But you got to do the same thing to your Canva account, because you don't want to be, there's no point spending time trying to create a filing system, a folder system to organize content that you don't need to keep. If you try to do that, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out, well, what category would this go in? And how, it's not a decision you even have to make. If you don't need to keep it and you're certain of that, then delete it. If you don't think you need to keep it, but you're not entirely sure, create a custom folder called archive. I was speaking with somebody recently who said that they call that folder the attic, and they just, that's where you put all the things that you think you might need to refer to later, but you're not entirely sure. And again, you don't need to do a lot of organization on that. It's there kind of if you need it. And if you don't need it within the next year or two, you're probably going to feel a lot more confident going through and actually, deleting that, purging that at a later date. But you want to get down to this, just the stuff, you just want to organize the stuff that actually needs to be found again at some point so that you can work with it. So that delete and archive is going to be your step number 1.
I love that. I know that I have, because I do websites, I have tons of client Canva
Yeah.
files in there. And there are some times where I go back and need to reference some of that stuff later. Would you recommend doing like one master client folder for something like that, or having separate clients have their own folder so it's easier, again, to find?
I mean, everybody's going to have their own way of doing it that feels intuitive to them, and there is no one size fits all answer. I get asked about best practices, but what works for me in terms of how I'm going to go searching for information and retrieving information is not how everybody's brain works. And I'm never going to force what works for me onto somebody else and say, this is the system you have to adhere to, because that is an absolute recipe for zero maintenance on that organization going forward. And then you're going to be right back to that, the same place you were in when you started. So I do think, though, if you're looking for some best practices, things that work for a lot of people, I do think having a master primary clients folder is good, but then have subfolders, because you can nest folders 10 levels deep. So have subfolders for your clients. And then what's going to happen is if you have a clients folder in your archive folder, an archive clients folder, then you can just move those subfolders, those individual client folders, into the archive folder when you don't need them anymore. So if you are looking for a client that you're working with currently, you're going to go to your primary client folder, and then there's all your clients. And then within those folders, it's probably going to be broken down into brand assets or social media or whatever the folders are that you need to organize the content that you're creating for those clients. But when you're done with the folder, over to archive, clients folder under archive, and you just move them over there. So they're still accessible. They're just not going to be cluttering up your current clients folder, making it more difficult for you to find the stuff you actually need to work on in the moment.
I love that. I don't know that I realized I could do subfolders in
Oh, yeah.
Canva. That's
You absolutely need to use subfolders. I don't want to see folks with more than 12 to 13 top level folders, because what tends to happen is if you just start creating more and more and more folders, then you're still making it more work for yourself, because you're still having to scroll through all of them and find what you're looking for. You're giving yourself more decisions. Think about it in terms of creating the navigation on a website. What happens if you give them too many options to start with?
overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. Whereas if you have a maximum number of kind of top level general categories, and then you start filtering it down, you're spoon feeding the information to them step by step and leading them to what they're looking for. You just need to make sure that you name things with some thought and some forethought in terms of the kinds of content that might need to go under it. So they have to be specific enough that they make sense, but general enough that they're expandable going forward. Same sort of principle between website navigation and your folder structure in Canva.
When you put a file into a folder, does it remove it from that like main home section on
No.
Canva?
So the home screen is not something that you can organize. Probably one of the most popular questions the typical Canva user has, because it is overwhelming. It's trying to give you every possible avenue that you might want to follow. You want to create something? Here's 5 ways you can do it. You want to search for a template? Here's 3 ways you can do it. It's many roads to the same destination, but you can't do any sort of organization there. It really is just all those designs are just going to be a feed from, most recently edited to the furthest. So get into a habit of just going to the projects area immediately. It's linked on your left-hand side of the navigation of that main dashboard, and get into a habit of doing that. If it's easier for you to just bookmark that projects page rather than going to the homepage, do that. For me, I find I'm so used to going in there. I'm sure many people are in Canva, not just daily, but multiple times a day. You kind of develop the muscle memory to sign in to canva.com and then straight over to projects. I don't even have a second thought about it anymore. But don't work from that home screen, because unless you're just going there to quickly create something or to go to your brand kit or go to templates, if you are looking for a particular design, I mean, it can be handy if it's the last thing you were working on, but if you're going to have to search for anything, going to projects is going to be your best place to go. Now, that said, if you go to projects, when you move things into a folder, it does move off of that projects page. So what you will ultimately see if you get everything organized on that projects page, you should just see those folders and nothing else. Because once you move the designs out, once you move images into folders, all of them are going to clear off of that page.
So initially everything, if I had a just brand new Canva account, okay, let me back up. Not brand new. A Canva account that has never been organized with anything. So there's lots of things going on in there, lots of created documents, images, all the things.
Yep.
And so if I just go into projects, it's just all going to be in there. It would look very similar to the home screen.
Correct.
And then once you start organizing, you can actually organize that piece of it.
Yep.
Oh, see, and I didn't know that. I just go from the home screen and I'm like searching, and then I use the search function a lot. And I try to remember to move things. I do my custom proposals for custom web design in Canva. Right. And I try to remember to always move them to proposal. And I know yesterday I was in there looking for something. Actually, and that was a presentation I was looking for a summit. And I was trying to find the most recent one, and it wasn't in my presentation folder. I was like, no, I forgot to. I always think of it as tagging because it puts the little name down below, but I forgot to move it into the folder. So it was not in there.
Yeah, and it can feel very daunting at the beginning to start getting some structure to it. The easiest way to start tackling a big mess like that is look for the big category chunks. So for example, if I was moving stuff into a client's folder, I'm not going to be searching for all of the things for client A and moving them all into that client A folder. And now let's look for all of the client B and move into client B. I'm going to look through, I'm going to select everything that has to do with a client and move all of them into clients. And then I'm going to start chunking it in terms of the categories. My first goal is get that top level cleared out. And then we're going to tackle it one folder at a time to make it feel more manageable. Because if you try to start getting really granular with your organizing when you have thousands of files there, you're going to want to tear your hair out. I love organizing, but that would drive me insane. So you really need to do it in batches, and that's just going to make it a lot easier to power through and get it done.
So I find something that I do, and I don't feel like it is going to be a best practice, but I'll know that I have like a mock-up that I use personally for something of one of my files, and I need something similar for a client I'm working on doing like a VIP day, and I need a mock-up of her course, and I know I already have the image like the right size and everything, and I just need to go plop it in. So a lot of times I just copy the page, not the file, and add it in there. And so sometimes when I go back and I'm looking for that, it's
It's hard
within
to
my
find.
mock-up and I
Right.
can't find it. Do you have any tips for that? Like, should I be making a copy of the file so I have two and then giving it a good name so that I know it's specifically just for that client?
There's a couple of ways that you could go about this. I definitely wouldn't be just copying it and having it hide in there because you will never find it again. But you could duplicate it and then instantly, as soon as you duplicate it, folks have to get into a habit of renaming the file immediately. Don't come back to do it later because you will not remember to do it. And then you have to reopen it and redetermine what was this for? And it's just taking additional time and additional bandwidth that you don't need to be spending. So if you are duplicating a file to use it, just rename it right away and then go into the grid view mode and delete all the pages that you don't need. So all that's in there is the specific pages that you actually need. Another option to do that would be, let's say you talked about creating a proposal. So if you were doing proposals regularly, I would have a base master proposal layout that has all the page variations that I would possibly need. And then I would save that as a brand template within my account.
Mm.
Brand templates are only going to be available if you're on Canva Pro because it's part of the brand kit, and that is only available on Pro or Teams plans. But when you save it as a brand template, when you go to use it in the future, it's going to automatically prompt you to make a copy of it, and it's never going to overwrite that original one. So you'll always have that as your base template so that it's easier to make those copies. And ensure that when you make the copy, you're not going to be having to, oh, I'm missing a page here and go track that down. Everything that you need is there, and you just delete the bits that you don't need. I do the same thing for like a presentation. I'll have all the variations. If I know that there's one version of this presentation that I do um, for students versus one that I do for small business owners versus one that I do for creative professionals, there might be slightly different versions of slides or the kinds of content that I focus on in sections. So if I have all of those in this master template for a presentation, I just, it prompts me to make a copy. I rename it. I hop in there, delete the ones that I don't need, and then I've got everything I need moving forward for that presentation. And it makes it a lot faster, especially if you're reusing it regularly.
I love that tip. That was exactly what I was thinking about when you were saying using brand. I don't think I have anything set up in brand templates. I don't know that I've dove into some of those features that, I mean, I know it's been there for a while, but
Yeah. But I mean, I think, teams in particular will tend to use them because they want to make sure that their teams are using specific layouts that have been designed for these different things. But um, it's important, I think, as well for your own workflow, for streamlining your workflow, even if you're just an individual business owner. What are the things that I'm recreating and duplicating over and over that I could streamline by having just a standard version of it? So when I still run the website development agency, we did these WordPress health inspections, going and assessing websites, and it was the same. I'd have to customize the results in it because every website would perform a little differently, but the sections were always the same. So that was a template. It was a matter of clicking on the template, making the copy, put the client's name on it, go tweak all the spots to add their name in, and then I could put in the specific details and we were good to go. I didn't have to make a copy and then worry about did I delete or replace all of the previous client's name. uh, we've all made that mistake where you're duplicating something from a past client and all of a sudden you miss one of the names and then the new client says, why does this say so and so on it? It just ensures that the whole process is going to be a lot smoother.
oh, I love that. What are some of your other favorite Canva tips, hacks, those sort of things? I'm sure you have tons of them, but
I mean, I do love the organization piece. I think it gets it's not the sexy side of Canva, and I think it is just it's the underdog. But I mean, the brand kit is the other piece that I think is incredibly important that a lot of business owners don't set up until much later. I think if you're on a pro plan, set up that brand kit because you're going to save yourself a ton of time. And it is really going to ensure as well that everything you're putting out as a business owner is really brand consistent.
Mhm.
I know that a lot of folks, they love the video side and they love the AI features, and these are all really fun, but I really do tend to focus on the really kind of core foundational bits of How do we make sure you can find things easily? How do we make sure that everything looks consistently as part of your brand? How do we make sure that, you can easily find the templates that you need and you're not spending a ton of time going down the Canva rabbit hole, because you will if you are not careful, but you have too many other things that you should be doing. So I like to focus on the basics of what do you need to create to support your business. Let's focus on those things and doing those the best way that we can, and worry about the bells and whistles later, because you will never know everything that Canva has to offer you. And if you try, that's when you start feeling really overwhelmed. And I don't want folks to feel overwhelmed. I know there's a learning curve, and it's easy to forget the learning curve when you're sitting where I am. But I know that it's a lot to just get comfortable with navigating the platform and creating the basic pieces. So let's just start there, and we can start adding in the fun bits later on.
Oh, I love that. How long would you say someone needs to like set aside time to go just get started? Like, is it just take an hour and carve out a little bit of time so that it's, again, not this overwhelming, daunting project that, because obviously it would depend on how much they have going on in there. But I mean, what's like a good just to get started?
It's hard to say. I wish there was a quick answer that I could give to that, but I think it also depends on, are you comfortable with tech? I mean, the amount of time that it would take you, Laura, to go through it because you're already comfortable with tech stacks and navigating platforms. And I think you just have kind of probably have an intuitive sense of, okay, well, this is probably located here and where to go,
Mhm.
versus some folks I've worked with where they are starting a business for the first time. They have they don't know what a domain is, never mind what sort of software they're going to need, and you're coming at it from very different starting points. So those folks are going to need a lot more time and a lot more probably hand holding, and they're going to need to give themselves a lot more grace as well, and patience. So it's something though that I don't want it to be a task. Take it in bite-sized chunks, learn a little bit here and there, and start by just finding a couple of templates that can work for your brand. And don't worry, I think also a lot of folks want to have these great big complete marketing suites ready for them, unless you're prepared to hire somebody to create it for you. And if you are, great, go do that. Um, just understand that it's going to take time, and you will suddenly be looking back and realize that there are things that felt like a real struggle in the beginning that just become part of your day to day. They just become part of your vocabulary, and you didn't even realize it until you're looking back at it. So it's, again, I can't give a firm answer, but it'll take a little bit of time. Just don't expect to open it up one day and be a master of it by the end of that day.
It's a process for sure. How do you typically work with clients? I know I've seen you around in Sarah Massey's VIP program for her VIP days. Is that
Mhm.
the container in which you are working with clients typically, or tell us a little bit about that?
I would say the majority of my business is kind of courses and things that are available on demand. They're not so much one-on-one kinds of offers.
Mhm.
But of the services that I have, the only service I have currently is that VIP day. It is an organization VIP day, which tends to break down into over a couple of days.
Mhm.
That said, I am working on desperately trying to finally get a service out that I've been working on for many, 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 many months, for no other reason than I just never prioritize my own stuff. But that is going to be kind of a hybrid of, I won't do it for you, but you give me the information and I'll tell you what I think you should do in terms of organizing. I'm going to give you an action plan and a video and all that, and then go forth and organize when it works for you. So that one's not like a VIP day. It's just kind of a smaller asynchronous kind of
Mhm.
offer. I'm getting far more protective, I find, as I get older, in terms of the time that I make available for one-on-one, simply because I don't have the energy that I used to. And I'm a mom as well. And I feel like I just need to be able to create things and do things when I am feeling at my very best. And there are days that I just am in no position to tell people how to organize their Canva accounts. So it's going to be set up going forward for the most part to be able to just do those on the days that I'm feeling my 100%. But beyond those two offers, I don't do a lot of services. I just really prefer to I like to wake up and know that my day is mine to tackle projects as I kind of feel able and willing.
I love that. And so with your courses, is it mostly specific, like bite-sized courses? Do you have a signature course? Tell our audience a little bit about your courses.
They're small bites, kind of bite size, I would call them micro courses. I used to have kind of a signature bigger one that had live components and all this. And again, it's that energy thing. I also feel like with Canva, when you're wanting to learn the platform or you're running into challenges, you kind of want to solve the problem now. And I like the fact I like evergreen. I like having something that if they're ready to do it, it's right there for them. But they're small courses. They're all under $100. There's no live support on them, but there's complimentary bonus customer and student Facebook group where folks can post some questions if they have them. But I do find that most folks don't really need that. They just need something that's going to guide them through how do I do these specific things and be able to go back and refer to them when things change, because that's part of it is I try to update it. It's difficult with Canva because they do love to shake things up on the regular, which is exciting. It's exciting to see new features and new ways of doing things. But my excitement is usually quickly followed by, oh crap, I have to re-record half of those lessons.
That was literally going to be my next question, because as someone who also does a lot of like tech trainings and stuff around that, I'm always like, that's my biggest block is I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to update. As soon as you publish something and put it out in the world, they're going to do an update to the platform that you are creating videos on. That's just how it goes.
I'm working on my perfectionist tendencies. I will never have it 100% reflect exactly what's there because it literally, as soon as I do it, they'll tweak the name on something slightly. I figure if things are generally in the same location, even if they look slightly different or are named slightly different, folks are not stupid. They can figure it out. But if they add new features, they change functionality up dramatically, it does need to be redone. So I tend to plan on overhauling stuff at least once a year, occasionally twice a year, usually around the time that Canva Create happens. That's usually when there's a whole host of new things, new fun things that comes out and usually warrants a bit of an update.
Every time.
Yes, every time.
I would love to talk a little bit about some of the mindset stuff that's come up as you've gone through and kind of done a pivot in your business in the last few years, it sounds like. What would you say was one of the biggest like fears and doubts you had, and how did you overcome them when you decided to like stop the web design part of your business and go full steam ahead into the Canva organizational piece?
It was a process. I would say I started downsizing the services with the intent of not at that point of closing the business, but just really narrowing the focus in summer 2020. I think I just started realizing this is not bringing me joy, and I don't know what I want to be doing instead, and I didn't feel the confidence to just pull the plug on it and make that jump. I don't think I had the foundation yet on the Canva business to make that leap, or maybe I did and I just was talking myself out of it, but I wasn't ready to do it until suddenly I just was. I had first downsized a lot of clients to no longer doing new projects, but just kind of specializing in these WordPress checkups and doing kind of these page speed optimization projects and security things and of that nature. So I really got very narrow on the focus of those. That got rid of a whole lot of clients. And then it dwindled down eventually where I stopped taking on projects and I had one client left and I loved working with her. And she had this big, beautiful brand that has become incredibly successful. And I just had to be ready to let her go. What made it a lot easier for me is that my lead developer that I had worked with since 2017, no, 2007, pardon me, 2007. 2007, yeah, around that. I knew that she was building her agency and I was able to, with good conscience, just let all of the clients go at that point. And the ones who were coming back to me saying, can you take something on? Because I knew they would be in tremendously good hands with her. I didn't want to leave anybody hanging. And because she had come to know these clients really well, it was a matter, the handoff was unbelievably easy. I I consider myself very, very fortunate because I know a lot of people wouldn't have been in that position to have somebody to just hand off to that they really totally trusted. But to have somebody that I had built that kind of loyal relationship with, that I had not a microsecond of doubt that they would be really well taken care of, it made the departure so much easier. And I still to this day, like I still refer people to her constantly if somebody's looking for specifically WordPress. Um, it I think once I figured that out, honestly, the decision was easy. And I'm just so grateful that I'm, looking back on it more than a year since then, that I'm not looking back thinking, what did I do? Because there's always that little doubt in the back of your head, like, are you going to regret this? You can't undo this. You hand all these clients over, you are like, there's no getting them back. And I did not want to start over. But I think once I freed myself of that and I was able to just 100% focus on my own projects as opposed to focusing on all my client projects, suddenly I was able to do all the things that I had never been able to do before.
Mhm.
And had I started on those sooner, I probably would have been able to move forward faster in this business. But trying to juggle both is just, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I know some folks can do it, and more power to them. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. I mean, I know I find like the stuff that I want to create for my business, it always gets put on the back burner.
Yep.
So it makes it hard
Every
to create
time.
those things. Yeah, absolutely. How did you find, so then you started creating the Canva courses, because you had courses before you said that weren't really the thing that people were wanting. They were wanting to know how you created the things for the course. So once you started creating those courses, how'd you get traction on that?
So I started that part, the courses, the first Canva course was launched in 2019. Um, and honestly, I am very grateful just to the community that I was in, because they were my first beta testers for this course. And, considering I continued to give them access to all future iterations of those programs, they got in at a good time. um, but they just became my first people on that list. I wasn't even selling any courses initially, so it was a matter of creating a Facebook. I started a Facebook group specifically called How to Use Canva, and people started naturally finding it, and people would recommend it, and I think just organically it grew. So when I got to the point that I was wanting to switch over entirely to a purely Canva education-based business, I already had a really strong list. I've closed the group some time ago just because I didn't feel like maintaining that anymore. But it wasn't quick. But I think it's just naturally a subject that people are very interested in. If you're a small business owner, this is a program you are going to use. I don't know any small business owners who don't use it, or at least who aren't aware of it. So that does make it easier to sell in a sense, because folks like you are excited to talk about Canva and the things it can do for their business and the new features that are coming out. So it really does make my job easier that people want to talk about what I teach. Fewer people wanted to talk about how to prevent a website nightmare from happening, and nobody wanted to talk about their website being hacked and the things they should be doing to prevent it, although that's really important.
It is.
um,
I talk about that all the time.
and it's harder because it's something painful to think about as opposed to Canva, something fun to think about. So that in itself is not something that can be easily replicated across industries. It just made my job a lot easier. And then I've never would have described myself as a networker, but I'm somebody who really loves relationship building. So a lot of it has just been building online relationships, looking for questions, answering questions without any sort of ulterior motive, and building visibility and awareness and trust and relationships that way over, a 5-year period has just naturally gotten to the point now that I don't have to try as hard, although I do still love to hop out into groups and find new people, because you never know where you're going to find your next client. So,
I love that. I think it's such an important point that you just brought up about the importance of building relationships,
mhm.
especially in the online space. But I mean, in any business, my husband has a brick and mortar um, business that he runs, and he's constantly building relationships with people, and that's the backbone of all this that
Yeah,
we're doing. So, I mean, that's
100%.
the reason I created the podcast is it was a platform that now I can go reach out and meet new people and then connect them with my audience. And it's been so fun for me because it's new relationships that I get to build. So I love that.
Yep, absolutely.
I would love to talk a little bit about some of your wins. I'm a huge fan of celebrating wins. I usually do it with a cheese plate. For everyone who follows me on Instagram, they know I have my like $9 cheese course and I love celebrating all my wins with cheese plates. What is something that we could celebrate you and your accomplishments? What's something you're really proud of that you've accomplished when you're looking back on your business?
Oh my gosh, that I'm still here. The moments of crushing doubt that I'm happy to say I have not really felt in the past 5 years, but I mean, I've been a business owner for 24 years, and there have been a lot of moments in that time that I just thought, is this ever going to work? Am I just barking up the wrong tree? What should I go work for somebody else and just toss this? And there's no shame in that either. I want to be really clear. I think sometimes people hold up just the idea of closing a business and finding a position with another organization or company as being some sort of failure. And it's not. It comes down to, what do you want? What is going to support you and the life that you want and the family that you have? What feels right to you? And there's no shame attached to it. I am happy to cheer on those who feel like, no, I'm done. I want, you know, I say security in quotes, of working for another business. Do what's right for you. For me, there were a lot of moments that I thought I was done. And there was just always this kind of nagging feeling in me of, no, you can do this. And this, I don't think, even in those lowest moments, I don't think I ever stopped trusting myself. And I think that's the thing that I am most proud of. I knew myself and what I was capable of, and I knew it was not going to be easy and it was not going to come quick. Um, I am deeply grateful for my husband's endless patience, because I'm sure there were moments that he wanted me to just throw in the towel as well. And he's awfully glad now that I didn't. Um, but I do think that of anything, it's not about clients that I landed or projects that I did. It's that I didn't give up. I followed my instincts and I trusted myself. And I now know that I can trust myself with any decision that needs to be made. If that makes sense.
It does. And I think that's an incredible thing to celebrate because
So,
it's hard. Like
yeah.
running a business, it's not easy. I was one of those people that I had that super secure quotes job.
Yeah.
And then when I was pregnant with my first child, I got a call at 8 a.m. and they said, your position's been eliminated. You have until noon.
Oof.
I said,
Oof.
I'm
That's rough.
pregnant. Yeah. And it was, I was far enough along. I'm like, no one's going to hire me. And I'm
Right.
not going to I was working remote back before it was like a thing.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not going to be able to find another remote job. I'm not going to be able to find a job that the position I worked in corporate didn't really translate into other fields. It was very specific to that industry. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this baby? Have a baby and then go
Yeah.
back to work and like start a new job, then leave for 3 months and have a baby. And then what are we going to do with the 3-month-old? So that was when I started my business, which was really
Yeah.
starting, being an at-home mom, which was not the plan, and then trying to figure out motherhood and creating a business. And like, so it was a very interesting flow that I went through as I talked to a lot of people who, they had like the corporate job and the side hustle, and then they took the
Yep.
side hustle full time. I've talked to people who have been just doing their own thing for so long.
Yep.
And it's no matter how you do it, it's never easy.
No, no. And the we all try to make it look like we're having a lovely sunny time with our business at all times on social media. And I'll talk to friends who are saying so and so just always they just have it all together and they just their life looks so good. I'm like, that's what they're putting on social media. It's a dumpster fire behind the scenes because it is for all of us at times. But we're not going to put that out there. We're putting the glossy pictures, we're putting the vacation photos, we're putting on the happy smiley people pictures out there, and that's just not the reality of it a lot of the time. Everybody has a different path to what entrepreneurship looks like for them, but every I don't think there's anybody who's had an easy time of it. Just doesn't exist.
No, it's not smooth sailing, but it is
Nope.
rewarding. I will like,
So
you know,
many ways. So many ways. Like I would be really hard pressed to work for somebody else at this point just because I am a woman who loves my own schedule. Because if we had a rough night, if those cats decided that 4:15 was an appropriate time to get up and play on me, I want the opportunity to, ignore them and sleep in a little bit to catch up on the rest and just stay in my sweatpants until noon. And I love the flexibility more than, yes, you can have financial success with a business, but the flexibility for me has just been the most important thing. That when I wake up and suddenly my kid was, oh, great, they've got the latest gastro bug that's going around. There was no need to call in and ask for time off. It's just a matter of, okay, I'm going to push that meeting. The rest of the day looks good and I'll go be a mom. And I didn't need to accommodate for anybody else. I could just have the flexibility to be there for my family. That for me has been the number one reward.
yep, same here. We, at the time of this recording, yesterday was actually the second grade field trip for my oldest daughter. And so my husband and I, because we're both entrepreneurs and
Yes.
can do whatever we want with our schedule, we hopped in the car in the morning after we put the kids on the bus and we shot up to Santa Barbara and met up with the field trip.
Yeah.
And got to spend the day hanging with the second graders at the Sea Museum. And it was great. I'm like, how lucky are
Yeah.
we? Like, this is why we do it.
Yeah. Or yesterday I spent far too much time desperately trying to find a pair of shoes at the mall. And did I find the shoes that I wanted? Absolutely not. But am I glad I had the flexibility to go try on 3 million pairs? Yes, I am. And then to go for a quick lunch with my husband, in the middle of the day without you know, that flexibility has been absolutely priceless for me.
I love that. I could talk to you all day. This has been so much fun. I just looked at the time and was like, wow, where did that just go? I have one question that I ask everyone who comes on the podcast, and that is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone when they are growing and scaling their business that would help them be bolder, be louder, and make waves?
I think don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, to send the email, to reach out to the person, to ask the question. If there's a podcast you want to be on, pitch them. Don't talk yourself out of it. Is there a chance they'll say no? Absolutely. But if you don't ask, you don't get. But there's a caveat to this. Before you ask for help, do some work and actually see if you can find the information out yourself. Because the number of people who I see asking for help when a quick Google would have got them what they needed, it's remarkable actually how many people, when that much information is available at your fingertips. So make an effort. Show people before you reach out for help. Show people that you've made an effort. I think, I will reward somebody who takes initiative and actually says, I've looked for that. I've tried this. It's not working. And then reach out for help. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to and will say yes. But I think there were a lot of opportunities that I talked myself out of because I felt I wasn't good enough at something. That good old imposter syndrome gets in the way, or I felt like I didn't have enough experience, or somebody else maybe would be better at it. And I think there are opportunities like podcasts I could have been on, trainings I could have given, positions I could have secured if I had just been brave enough to actually ask and put myself out there and to be visible. So
I think that is fantastic advice. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you, come hang out with you online, find out more about your courses, all the things?
Everything is at brendacadman.com. You'll find free resources there. You'll find micro courses there. You'll find a couple of services there. But I do really focus a lot on free content because I do want folks to, if you're beginning using Canva and you're in the early stages of it, I want to make sure that you have some of the resources available to you to actually build those foundations. And then, when you're ready to maybe dive a little bit deeper, there's some courses available there on demand for you.
Wonderful. I will link all that up in the show notes. Thanks so much for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to check out the show notes at lauracomark.com/podcast. And if you're ready to turn your website into a marketing machine, get more sales, save time, and simplify the back end of your business, grab my free resource, Power Integrations for your website. Head on over to lauracomark.com/power. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe. And also, I'll just love you forever if you leave me a review. It helps get this podcast in front of other people that can help inspire. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye now.